I do want to know if I have something on my teeth though. God, that was the thing I had to do last night. I had to wax my mustache, and now it's fine. It's too late and you're far away. So, hello everybody. Good morning. I realized that it's been a while since the last time I did a Q&A. It's been 2 years. Oh, my voice. And also, it's June. It's Pride Month. And I've realized that this is the first Pride Month in which I'm openly out as a lesbo. So I thought it might be entertaining for you and fun to do a Q&A because it's been a while. And so before we begin, I need to do a couple of announcements. So I'm going to Spain. I can't believe I just said that out loud. I'm going to Spain in a couple of weeks. I'm doing a workshop there, and there's still a couple of spots left in the workshop. I'm gonna leave all of the dates so you can check, but I'm so excited. I'm gonna go. And the other announcement is that all of my books, all of my graphic novels, and all of my scenes are now available as ebooks. So if you go to my online store, which is called Nice Humans, you're gonna find all of the books there, which is super exciting because I've never properly uploaded ebook files ever. So anyway, I'm also going to leave all of the questions down below in case you don't want to watch this massive video, in case you want to know the specific answer, a specific question. And I'm not going to do any inserts. So if you want to put me in the background, sort of like a visual podcast, you're more than welcome to do so. I'm not going to judge you and hate you. I'm an illustrator and I love video essays. So if you want to do that, that's be my guest, baby. Please have a seat and have a snack. And let's just start. I divided this Q&A in many sections because I've noticed that there was a pattern with the questions. So I'm gonna begin with the juicy stuff first, because I'm sure that's why you're here. Although maybe you're new and you have no idea who I am. My name is Fran, by the way. I'm an illustrator. I'm a Chilean queer illustrator living in Brooklyn, New York. So the first question, so many questions about my dating life. And if I'm dating someone, and how's the single life going? It's going good, you guys. It's going well. I don't know what to answer that. I think it's a cool thing to be a queer person in New York City because there's an abundance of gays. And it's been really nice to meet people, and I am not currently dating someone right now, but I'm in the apps. So the second question is around my journey, accepting my homosexuality and reflections on coming out and my queer journey. By the way, I have my notes in my computer, so I'm gonna look down to my notes, by the way. So it's been up and down, if I'm honest, in terms of like my sexuality journey, because, and I think again, there's like the dialectics. I love dialectics, but the concept of dialectics is that they're two seemingly opposite concepts or emotions can both coexist at the same time. And it's been both, like I've been feeling shame around coming out later in life, because I think it's tricky, you guys, to be a 34 at the time 34-year-old woman coming out. It's I felt a lot of shame because of that, because you're told that you must figure out these things right away. And at the same time, I feel immense joy of discovering a key element in my life that I didn't know was there. And I also feel so much proud that I changed the course of my life drastically, which is something that is so freaking scary, because once you're set in a path of like, this is what your life is gonna look like, and suddenly realizing, oh my God, I just realized this about me and I have to change it. It's an overwhelming and super scary moment. And so I am very proud of myself. So, in terms of how I'm doing now, I think it's cool that most, if not all of the people around me know that I'm mega gay, which is a nice thing. And at the same time, I'm still figuring out what this means in the long term because, like I said, I thought my life was going in a certain direction, and now probably it's going in a very similar direction, but it like the tint changed kind of like abruptly. So I'm still trying to figure out where I'm heading. I think, and I wrote this down, but it still hurts when people find out that I'm gay and when they know my story and like I was married to a man, and they're like, oh my God, I'm so sad you were living in a lie for all these years. And I'm like, it wasn't a lie because I didn't know. The second I knew, I like made changes around it, but I wasn't living a lie. And so those comments, they come every once in a while and they still hurt. And last but not least, I think a couple of relatives are still getting around the idea that I'm queer / a lesbian because I don't live. So this is the thing, you guys, I've been living abroad for 8 years now, and I haven't been in Chile since 2019. So most of my family members, even though they know that I'm gay, they haven't seen me in my gayness, you know? And I think they're still getting around to the idea that I'm gay. And I have heard a couple of times people describing my lesbianhood as like, oh my God, yeah, she's going through her situation, you know, or like, oh yeah, that she has the same condition you have. Like they keep referring my sexuality as like a condition or a situation, or what was the other, or like a process. And I know it's difficult for some people to say lesbian out loud. I was the one who also struggled saying lesbian because it's a word that I intertwine with just like a bad word or like an insult. And so that's something that I'm still getting around to. There's one question that says, how did you know you're gay? I'm confused myself. Baby, it's all good. I actually made a video around all of these subjects and how I figured out I was gay and all of the early signs that I missed. So I'm gonna leave it down below or like in one of the corners in case you wanna check that out, because we could talk about this for hours. How does it feel to be out? It feels both exhilarating, amazing, and ridiculous. It feels amazing and it's truly a blessing to be able to be yourself 100%. Again, I didn't know I wasn't myself 100% before knowing that I was gay, but it feels amazing to be able to be myself. And it feels ridiculous at the same time because announcing your sexuality to the world, it feels ridiculous. I'm sure you guys agree with this. So what is your perfect date? Oh my God, I love this question, you guys. I think this is the first time I've dated actually in my life. I was previously only in relationships, so I think now I'm like mastering the art of dating. And I will say my perfect date is having coffee at the park. I will say that going to the park is great because it has many exits, and if things don't go as planned, it's very easy to excuse yourself when you're in the park. Also, having coffee is super cheap. It's easy to split the cost and the expenses. And there's so many things to talk about and like people watching and things you can point and talk about. There's so many things to do. You can walk, you can sit. And so I think for a first date, I love the idea of having coffee at a park. You can end the date and it can extend as long as you want. And I think for a second date, I will go for like making dinner together or going to a museum and something like maybe more, intimate and like, that could last longer. I love this question because it says, you're the essence of queerness. How did we miss that? Compet. It was compet. The next section is all around mental health. And the first question is, how's your mental health? Going through depression and it's hard. I'm so sorry, baby. Thank you for asking. I will say like my mental health is good. I think after being in therapy for about 2 years now and being on antidepressants, like that definitely helps. I have no idea my depression status though now, because I'm, in all honesty, you guys, I'm lowering my Zoloft sertraline prescription, which is my antidepressant. And now that I'm lowering my antidepressant, I'm like, does this mean that I'm depressed yet? Like, where do I graduate from depression? Maybe I will never graduate from depression, but I wonder if you get a diploma at some point. I'm trying to find my new normal. So previously, this is like in the previous episode of Fran's life, I was going through a very intense period of my life of like figuring out who I am and like what am I going and how do I want to conduct my life from now onwards. So now that I'm standing up again, or it feels like I'm standing up again, I'm trying to reframe how do I approach work and productivity and self-worth. I'm trying to reframe my relationship with social media. I'm trying to get better at creating a balance for my life that makes sense and not trying to, again, intertwine my self-worth with my work and who I am in my work life. Also trying to be more assertive in life. I am a people pleaser, like a person pleaser. That sounds weird. In recovery. So I'm trying to be more assertive with my needs and what I want. And that has been an incredible journey. Another question is, do you feel as though you're living very similarly as your ideal self? I love this question so much because during my 20s, I remember I had this vision of the woman, the person that I wanted to be, and felt that I was so far away from it. I saw myself as wanting to be this person who reads while having breakfast and like taking myself on dates and going to museums and enjoying art and being very knowledgeable about music. And I wanted to have my own studio and like being an art illustrator freelancer and stuff like that. And now 10-ish years later, it's been so lovely to realize that I am the person that I've always wanted to be. I know it sounds like I'm so full of myself or whatever, but like I am so proud, you guys, of all the hard work that I've been putting into myself and like being a better person for and with myself and for others, and trying to be more compassionate around my weaknesses and my strength. And also it's so cool that now, like looking back, I am like, oh, I have no idea what my taste in music is like. I've never sat down and like listened to music. I'm gonna do this crazy challenge and I'm going to listen to 500 albums to figure out what I like. And now that I finished the challenge, I'm like, oh, I think I kind of know something about music now. And I started doing the same with books. And it's been really lovely to be the person that I've always wanted to be. And with this, I'm not saying like, oh, job's done. I'm like, no, I want to keep discovering myself and improving myself. But it's so nice that I am living the life that I've always wanted to be. I've worked my ass off to get to the point in which I am right now. And I'm so proud. So thank you for asking that. Okay, I got this question a couple of times, and it's how do you deal with imposter syndrome? I'm so sorry if you're watching this video and you're dealing with imposter syndrome. Unfortunately, I think imposter syndrome is like fear, and it never goes away. You just have to work alongside imposter syndrome. Something that I like to remind myself, you guys, is that thoughts are not facts. And this is like my mantra from now onwards, because not because you're thinking about something, it means that it's real or it means that it's truth. So I remind myself to be as specific as I can. I actually wrote it down, like, why do I feel this way? What facts support this feeling? How can I prove this? And see if it comes from a place of anxiety or hormonal. I find that the times in which I feel tormented the most is when I'm not in a good place myself or when I'm gonna get my period. And so I always try to take my thoughts with a grain of salt and ask myself, thoughts are not facts. Not because I'm thinking about this, it means that it's truth. I don't know if this helps in any way. There's one question that is, if your day starts out not so good, what is the first thing you do to turn it back around? And I think the first thing I do, I will get a treat. Here at the studio, Lou and I have a bunch of snacks. So I will probably get a snack / a coffee. I will also go to the park. I know this is a cliche, but going outside and being surrounded by nature gives me this sense of you gain perspective on your problems. And I find that nature is so healing in that regard, because everything, again, takes another, you gain perspective on your issues and the things that you're going through when you're breathing fresh air and you're surrounded by trees and dogs. Also a good sweat. I found that dancing or being as silly as you can while dancing or working out, it frees yourself from a lot of like build up stress in your body. And also having a good laugh with friends always helps. Okay, so there are two questions that are they're different, but they're similar at the same time. So how do you stay motivated / inspired? And how do you avoid getting a burnout? And I think both of these things, even though they're different, they respond to situations in which I didn't listen to myself. I didn't listen to, or like I didn't pay attention to the cues that my body was signaling or giving me, or my mind was giving me or signaling. I also try to listen or like pay attention and be mindful of how am I feeling and when it's time to keep pushing and keep working, and when to take a break or when it's time to stop. So many times, you guys, and I actually wrote this down, so many times I've been late into these cues, or I didn't listen to these signals in time. And I think I have had so many periods in my life in which I've been like heavily burned out and just not respecting my own boundaries. And so I have learned my lesson. I think the first thing that I wanted to talk about is what are the first signs that I go through when I'm about to lose motivation or inspiration, or when I'm about to burn out. And I get very grumpy, you guys. I get grumpy with everybody around me. I get restless. I've noticed that things take longer to do, or it's harder for me to focus and to concentrate. So everything takes more energy and more time to do. And I also find that I am constantly looking for the new shiny thing, especially when you're going through a very long-term project like a graphic novel or a long-term project. You find that high again. You're like, I want the new shiny object. And a new shiny object could be like new art supplies, or like, oh no, I need to get this gadget because the gadget is going to fix all of this unmotivation in my life. Or like, I will try to start a new project, or all of those highs, not good. I find myself dodging with unhealthy habits, and unhealthy habits could be, or like behaviors, for example. And so when it's been a habit or a ritual that I'm going back home feeling exhausted and restless and super tired or stressed, I'm like, oh, okay, this thing is coming. It's coming up. I can see it at around the corner. How do you pay attention to the signs? I find that listening to my own cues was a learning process, like a learning curve, because in the beginning I was missing them. Because again, when you're intertwining your self-worth with productivity, you're like, I'm not gonna listen to these cues, I'm just gonna keep going. But now I find that, and again, another cliche, but it's a cliche for a reason, journaling, you guys. Journaling has been a lifesaver because you're very in tune with your creative process, what you're going through, what you're thinking. Also, having a check-in with peers and friends. I found that when I talk to my friends about what I'm going through, or when they ask me like, hey friend, how's it going? it's a nice moment to also be mindful of where you're at and what are your process. I highly suggest having a group of peers, of people who do something similar than you are, because I find that it's so comforting when you're surrounded yourself by people who exactly understand what you're going through and they can give you their 2 cents on something. And also, I was gonna say social media and Patreon, but only because the way I use social media and Patreon nowadays, it's a great tool in the sense that I love sharing my creative process with you guys, and especially on Patreon with you Q&As and like live streams. And I also have the podcast newsletter, and I find that being reflective or introspective about my process and what I'm going through helps me to be in check, anyway. And I found that also allows me to see the signs before they happen. But the last thing I wanted to say in regards to this is be mindful of watering or filling your cup, like watering the plant or filling your cup regularly. So I will do, for example, this year I committed myself to do one creative activity a month. And so each month I will do like a special creative activity. And that could be, for example, going to a concert or going to a stand-up comedy show or going to a museum or going to an art retreat, something that is out of the ordinary. And also it's not forcing myself, but I will challenge myself to not watch Gilmore Girls for the 80th time and try to watch a new movie. Gilmore Girls is my comfort show, can you tell? But like sometimes you just want to have a comfort show, but when I'm in the right headspace, I will be like, no, you know what? Tonight I'm gonna watch a different movie. And I found that when you expose yourself to books and new music and new movies, something happens inside. And I'll say that's very important to keep keeping your creative plant water. And we water our plants in different ways and different forms. So you have to find the one that fills your cup, so to speak. I love the analogy of watering a plant, because you're supposed to do it regularly and not when the plant is dying, so although we have all been that person, I think. Have you dealt with art comparison? How do you get over it? I love this question. Of course, baby. Of course. I think we all compare ourselves to another person or another artist. And I think I once read in a book that envy, because that's what you're doing when you're comparing yourself to someone, you're feeling in some way you're feeling envy. And I've learned that envy is a great tool because envy tells you what you want. What a mind-blowing fact. Isn't that amazing? And so when I am comparing myself to another artist, I will be as specific as I can, you guys. I'm like, okay, bitch, why are you comparing yourself to her or to him or to them? And I will write a list of like, oh, because of their art style, because of the color palette, because of like, I'm gonna list all of the reasons as specific as I can, and then see, do I really want this in my life? Do I really want to work on the landscapes? The example can go on and on, but by being specific, I suddenly have a task. I also try to remind myself that there's cake for everybody, you guys. Amy Poehler, in her book, she was saying how envy sometimes is nasty because you're like, I want all the cake is like the industry and like job opportunities. And she's like, there is cake for everybody. Not because one illustrator or one artist is successful means that there's going to be less cake for you. Like, people want a lot of cake. And so there's cake for everybody. We can all share it. And just remind yourself that every artist is working their best they can, and they're doing the best, like they're working their asses off, and we all deserve some slice of the cake. I can carry on with the cake analogy forever, but that's what I'm trying to remind myself and focus in the stuff that I can control. Before asking a therapist, how did you know you were struggling with depression? I guess, you guys, before asking my therapist, I knew something was off because I didn't find joy in the things that I used to find enjoyment in. And so nothing was bringing me joy. And I also noticed that everything took longer for me to do, not only in terms of time, but also in terms of energy. I found that I was mentally exhausted by doing things and I didn't want to do anything at all. So those were at least my personal warning signs. Okay, the next section is art and freelancing. I received a lot of questions about the podcast. So I don't know if you guys know, but Ed and I, we have a podcast in Spanish, and it's been really tricky to record new episodes. But in the meantime, I don't know if you guys know, but I have a podcast on my Patreon. It's both in English and Spanish, and I've recorded something like 150 something episodes. So if you're in the crave, if you want content, if you want a podcast, just go to my Patreon. Look at that, a very shameless plug. Do you think who you are, you said informs, but I'm hoping it influences your work, and in what way? I think, and this is again a very personal opinion, you guys, but I think art and artists, the art and the artist are heavily intertwined. And it's only because, I think this way because so much of myself, it's being poured into what I do and into my art. And so to me, it's very difficult to separate both things. And I think what is happening nowadays, in cases in which people are canceling artists and musicians and stand-up comedians and people in the film industry and like all of those things, is because the person who you are, I just spit a lot, the person who you are outside of your career is influencing the perception of what we have of you. I don't know if that makes sense, because we want to know where you stand politically, where you stand in terms of racial matters and feminism and reproductive rights. We want to support people who are aligning with our ethical and moral views in the world. And so I think, again, very personal, but I think art and artists to me are very intertwined. I think the way my art reflects who I am is because I talk a lot about a very introspective journey of trying to discover who I am and where I stand, like my mental health journey and my traumas, and ultimately I want to make people feel less lonely. That's the goal of my work. Okay, there's one question around what projects I'm focusing on right now. And right now, you guys, I'm working on a scene or a tiny book around New York City, my favorite places, and just like where to go, where to have amazing drawing dates, vegan cafes, my favorite thrift shops, and where to get books and stuff like that. And of course, the graphic novel, which is the toll of my life. But other than that, I'm trying to get back into a more regular schedule on YouTube and Patreon, all of the content that I'm putting on Patreon as well. So that's where I'm at right now. Would you ever want to do editorial or publishing work again? Absolutely. So I've been away from publishing my books with a publishing house because I've had a couple of bad experiences publishing in the past, and now I'm like, oh, I wonder what self-publishing will feel like. But now that I'm working on the graphic novel and realizing I could get to more places with this book with a publisher, I'm like, oh my god, it will be actually nice. So my answer is yes. Advice on someone who's going to make a graphic novel. Oh baby, buckle up. I wrote down prepare for a long-term project and what that means. And the graphic novel in that regard has been challenging for me, not only because it's a long-term project, but also because we're so wired, you guys, to have instant gratification because of social media. And the graphic novel is the opposite of that, because even though you could share what you're doing, there's no instant gratification of it because you have to wait until the thing is published in order to show it around. And so what to do once the honeymoon period is over. I find that when you're working on long or like medium to long-term projects, you're over the honeymoon process very quickly, in which you're feeling absolutely disengaged with the project. You're like, I just want to get this over with, and you're not in love with the project anymore, and you're so close to quitting every once in a while. So just try to be mindful around that. And I lost so much time over preparing myself because I thought that I wasn't good enough to do a graphic novel, especially a sci-fi graphic novel. And now I've realized that it wasn't necessary to over prepare myself for it. I just had to do it. And also test as much as you can. I remember I drew something like 200 pages worth of a storyboard, only to realize when I finished the storyboard that the composition that I chose, it was too small. And so just draw a couple of storyboard pages, try the composition you like or like the proportion of the frames. And once you're sure that that is working out, carry on doing the rest of the storyboard. But just test constantly because, again, long-term projects, it's easy to lose a lot of time. Do you get a lot of work from companies or do you do your own projects? So I haven't done commissions for a couple of years now because thanks to you Patreons, thank you, you guys, thank you. I'm able to focus on my personal projects. I don't like saying personal projects because I just have personal projects. I don't have any other projects. So I can focus on the graphic novel and the scene and the store and YouTube and stuff like that. And so I think the request I get the most is for sponsorships on YouTube, which is something that I've always said no to because since I have Patreon, I can have this platform ad free, which is nice. I'm not saying that I'm never going to do it, but so far it's been working for me. So thank you so much, Patreons, for allowing me to do this. You are the sponsors, Patreons. So how do you meet your odd friends? Did you take initiative? So I think both. I think making videos and having a somewhat strong or any presence on social media helps you being like, when you're meeting someone, being like, hey, I'm not a weirdo, see? And once you introduce yourself, it's easier for the other person to see who you are and like all of that stuff. But I'll say like most of the times I've taken the initiative myself. I will DM mutuals, or when I moved to New York City, I'm like, hey, I noticed that you also live here. Let's go have coffee. But also it's been this serendipity of being introduced to people, like other artists will introduce artists to me and then clicking it immediately. And that happens to me, for example, at the art retreat. Most of the people that I went with to the art retreat with, I didn't know them previously. It's just a new Kendall. And now it's so nice to be like, oh yeah, Fabiola is my friend, and like Grace is my friend, and Missy, and like, you know, it's just like, it's so cool. This is like a type of miscellaneous, like personal life and hobbies section. What non-work related thing have you been really interested in lately? I will say reading books, you guys. I've noticed that there were a lot of books in mainstream English literature / language that I have never been part of. Like I feel like I'm having the thought that I have to catch up with a lot of reading, because the mandatory reading list that you guys have here in the US or in the UK, it's not the same the books we have in Chile. And so I was so curious about, like, I was so sick of people being like, oh my God, Moby Dick, and like Great Expectations, or all of this like quintessential English literature reading. And I'm like, you know what? I'm going to catch up. And so I've been reading a lot lately. And also I've been really interested in tarot cards lately. I am teaching myself how to read tarot cards. I guess that's the best way to put it. Favorite thing about New York City, I will say the fact that there's a place for everybody, no matter what you like, or no matter what your interests interests are, you're most likely going to find a community for the things that you feel passionate about. And also how, like, the chance to see history unfolding in front of your eyes. Every time I go to a live jazz like music thing, I'm like, oh my God, this is probably gonna be a very important artist in the jazz scene, and I'm seeing it live in a really tiny cafe. So seeing people that you know they're gonna be super big in a very close proximity is really, really exciting. And also, I love the people in New York City. I love the abundance of cultures and learning so much about other countries and other cultures. It's just like, it's a blessing, it's a privilege. How do I choose my readings? So I think I can answer this question in two ways. One, I have a friend, my friend Montserrat, that she has excellent taste. I think we all have that friend that has amazing taste. So every time I don't know what to read, I will ask her what to read. And so now we have this end of the year tradition in which we kind of like write down a list of the books that she recommends me. She's recommended me for the upcoming year, and that's my reading list for the year. And also, I find a lot of enjoyment and recommendations in booktubers. Actually, I've been following this booktuber called Emmy for a while, and I found that her taste might be similar to mine. And so every time she's like all over the moon for a book, I'll be like, I'm gonna add that to the list. So that's how I find new readings. Favorite band music these days? I think, oh man, I think like Sam Cooke and Billie Holiday and Nina Simone are always gonna be my ground, my basic forever favorite. But nowadays I've been really into Talking Heads and Wilco, Neil Young, obviously, Bill Evans, and Jose Gonzalez. I love Jose Gonzalez so much. And B52, I will say. The list can carry on, but those are like my to-go now. Someone said, Argentinian in London and my Spanish sounds weird. Does that happen to you? Bitch, all the time. Sorry for calling you a bitch. But yes, I'm at that point in which, and I know how obnoxious and like probably how snob it sounds right now, but I am talking English all day long because it's what I do. And I work with Louise. She only talks and she only speaks English. So I am at this point in which English is more, my level of English is, I think, in some way better than my Spanish. So when I speak Spanish, I feel like I'm always tripping my words. Like I found myself thinking how annoying I might sound because I'm like, how do you say this in Spanish? And I'm like, I don't want to be that person. But, you know, it happens when you have been living abroad for so long. Any book and podcast recommendation? Oh my God, you guys, I can talk about books and podcasts for forever. But I will say Volcano Lover is great. Middlesex and Americana and Just Kids. I always tell people to read Just Kids because it's one of my favorite books, but just read it. And in terms of podcasts, I am obsessed with You're Wrong About and with Maiden's Face, because just like learning about things that you were wrong all the time and debunking things is my favorite thing. And so those are my two to-go podcasts. And last but not least, best books of the year so far. I will say I haven't finished it yet, but Frankenstein, it's a good. And also Time is a Mother by Ocean Vuong. I'm mispronouncing their name, but it's not my first poetry book, but it's the first poetry book in which I've clicked with, and I cannot recommend it enough. So that's it, my loves. Thank you so much if you made it this far. I have one question for you, and it is, what are you obsessed with right now? What is your latest obsession? I would love to know what you're feeling passionate about right now, because we need to remind ourselves what gives us joy and happiness. So please let me know what's your latest obsession. And that's it. I hope you're having a lovely day no matter where you are. Stay safe, and I will see you very soon. Bye, guys.